I'm Mark Kelly, I'm Mr. Saltwater Tank, and this is Mr. Saltwater Tank TV. Today, due to popular demand by you guys, that would be the viewer, I'm going to talk to you about fragging coral, and I'm going to break it up into 2 episodes. Today we're going to talk about fragging hard corals. In a later episode, we're going to talk about fragging soft corals, because it's a little different process between each of them, and I want to make sure you understand them completely. And I'm also going to talk to you today about a very important step that most people overlook when they either get frags from a local fish store or trade them with a buddy or get them from an online retailer. Most people overlook this step, and it can be very, very crucial to the health of your tank. So keep an eye out for that. In the meantime, let's talk about what you're going to need to frag your coral. To frag LPS coral, you're going to need a pair of bone cutters, a pair of tweezers, super glue that I'll talk about in a minute, frag plug, and Tupperware to hold on to the frags until you're ready to glue them. That's all you need. Alright, we got all our fragging equipment together, and now it's time to cut some coral. I've got my dish here to put the frag in once I cut it, and I got my bone cutters to do the actual cutting on the coral. The last thing you're going to need, steady hands. If you know that you're someone who's going to cut one piece of coral and end up breaking off another on another piece, well, you might have your wife or one of your reef junkie friends over to cut the coral for you. There's no shame in this. If you know you're going to break something, it's better to ask someone else to do it. That way you're not tearing apart your reef tank, and I've done it. Again, there's no shame in that. And I'll give you guys something fun to do on a Friday night. I mean, there's nothing like fragging on a Friday night, right? What can I say? All right, so we're ready to cut. I'm going to turn off the pumps in my tank just to make sure that if I do have a frag that gets loose from me, it's not going to get blown under a rock. So I'm just going to access Aqua Notes here and turn it off through my apex. And those are off. Okay, great. Let's go cut some coral. All right, one thing you want to do in your fragging coral is you want to cut off a nice sized piece. I mean, no one likes anyone who's cheap, so a lot of people will try to cut you a piece like this and say that it's a good 1-inch frag, and let's be honest, they're lying. You want to give people more for their money. Make them happy. They're going to come back. And someone probably gave you a good sized frag when you get started, so you might as well do the same. So I am going to go ahead and cut on the bottom part of this coral here, right down low in this branch. And again, it doesn't take much, just a quick little nip. And then I can hold on to that frag. It's a nice size. Go ahead and take that one out and mount it up. All right, we got our frags cut. They're hanging out here in the Tupperware container, just chilling out. And let's talk about mounting your frags. Now, there are a couple different ways that you can mount them. The first way is not to mount them at all. You can just sell them as unmounted frags. Some people like to buy unmounted frags because they want to place them themselves. They might not want to use a frag plug. They might want to put them straight onto a piece of rock, so they're going to want them unmounted. And you can probably keep a couple of your frags off to the side as unmounted and sell them that way. Second way to sell some frags is put them on a frag plug like this. These are ceramic, usually they're aragonite, they're not a lot of money. You just glue the frag plug on here, and I'll show you about that in a minute, and then put it in your frag rack and sell it off. Now here's a quick tip for you. One way to get more money for your frag is to glue it onto your frag plug and then let it melt or encrust onto this plug. Usually people like seeing that a frag has had a chance to encrust because they know it's healthy, they know it's had a chance to recover. There's less of a chance of it dying in their tank. So you're going to have to wait a little bit longer, hold on to your frags for maybe 2 to 4 weeks, but you might be able to get more for them. The last way you can mount your frag is to actually mount them on a bigger disc like this. Sometimes they're sold as frag rocks. Some people like them to mount them on this because they'll fit into their live rock more. Personally, I mean, I've never been able to find a perfect piece one of these that fits into a piece of my live rock. So these are nice if I know I gotta have a big colony that's a perfect place, but I never really found these useful. So how do you get the frag to stick to the plug? Well, believe it or not, you just use super glue. Remember that stuff from the 80s that everyone said, you know, you glue your fingers together and you have to go to the emergency room? That's what you're going to use to glue your plugs. There's a certain type of super glue you want to make sure you use, and that is super glue that has this little substance in it here, it's a hard word to pronounce, cyanoacrylate. I think I got that right, one more time. Cyanoacrylate. Without this cyanoacrylate, super glue is not going to work. So make sure it's the gel type with cyanoacrylate in here. So, how do we apply the super glue in the frag and the plug? That's what I'm going to cover next. All right, we got our frag plug, we got our super glue, and we got our frag sitting here. So all you got to do is put a little dab of super glue there in the center. I put a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit more. And just give it a good dab. This stuff's $1 for 2 tubes. I mean, if you waste it, no big deal. So cap that up so it doesn't dry out. Set it to the side. You can see we got a nice little dab here, super glue in the center. Then what I do is I actually dip it quickly into the water. This will help it haze up a little bit. It helps that frag to really sit in there. Then just grab your frag, walk up here to your frag plug, stick it right down in there, hold on to it for a second. This will let the glue set up, and give it about a minute or so. You're not going to be hurting the frag while it's out of the air like this. And you're gonna kind of test it. You can see how it's falling off here. Once it's good enough to hold, like this, I'm going to go ahead and set it off in my little frag rack, high-tech frag rack there. And you can see it's trying to fall off. Just going to set it there and let it hang out. It'll be good for the 5 or 10 minutes that it's on the water. It's not a big deal. Once you're done gluing your frags, place them back in your tank, let them recover, and then place them up for sale or trade. So that's how you frag LPS coral. Now we're forgetting a whole nother part of the hard coral family, the LPS corals. And to show you how to frag that, we're going to go back down to Austin Aqua Farms with my friend Gary. Now you've seen Gary and Austin Aqua Farms on a previous episode of Mr. Saltwater Tank TV. But he's going to show us how he frags LPS coral because it's a little far out there how you do it. So let's get going. Gary, these look like bandsaws. Tell me what you do with these suckers.
We use the Inland DB100 bandsaws, wet dry bandsaws for fragging all of our coral. The diamond blade on each saw will cut through rock and about any type of coral you can think of. It's fast, efficient, and we've used the same saws for last 3 or 4 years now, so they work great.
So Gary, that looked pretty traumatic, cutting through coral with a bandsaw. What kind of success rate do you have?
We have about a 99.5% success rate.
And it looked like you were trying to cut around the polyps. Talk to me about that.
Yes, we try to cut around the polyps just because it allows for better heal time. Also, it's less traumatic on the coral. If we go around the skeletal instead of through the tissue, it makes things much easier and allows for a healthier coral down the road.
Once Gary's done cutting his coral, he puts the frags in a high flow, low light tank to help them recover. And then it's up for sale. Remember how I said at the beginning of the episode that I would give you a piece of information that was imperative to the health of your tank? Well, listen up, because this is it. Any piece of coral that comes into your tank has to be dipped. Now, why is that? Well, a coral dip kills any pests that might be on that piece of coral. So if it's a soft coral, let's say you have a zoanthid, and you might have a zoanthid eating nudibranch, it's going to knock that nudibranch off before it gets into your tank and spreads like wildfire. Same thing if you have any bugs on your acropora or other hard corals, that dip is going to knock out that pest before it gets into your tank and causes a problem. Now there are a couple of types of dips out there on the market, but I've only found one that I like and that I swear by, and that's Coral RX. Now Coral RX is a blend of natural plant extracts, so it's not as harsh as iodine-based dips, but it works just as well. So here's how you dip your coral. Specifically, here's how you use my coral dip of choice, Coral RX. After I have temperature and drip acclimated my coral to my tank, I'm going to go ahead and dip it. So this water here is a Coral RX mixture, and what I've done is I've added 30 drops of the Coral RX into a gallon of tank water and shook that up and then put it here in the Tupperware for it to dip. And then I just take my frag, I'm going to drop it in here and leave it there for 10 minutes. So start my timer, and during the 10 minutes I'm going to swish this water in the container around. That's going to take any parasites that are on the coral and it's going to pull them away. And one thing you have to keep in mind is that you're going to get 1 coral dipped per the solution. So I'm not going to take another piece of coral and put it in the solution after this coral's been dipped. Now that's because this Coral RX is going to be killing any parasites that are on this coral. And those parasites can release toxins. So if I contaminate this dip with toxins and then I take another coral and put it in that contaminated dip, I can nuke that coral. So 1 coral per dip. Once the 10 minutes is up, place the frag back in your tank and you're good to go. Keeping corals is one of the most rewarding parts about having a saltwater aquarium. And I'll be honest, you can make a decent side income if you can get your corals to grow fast and you keep abreast of what's hot in your current market. But if there's one thing I leave you with in this episode, no matter what, any coral that comes into your tank has to be dipped, period. There's no leeway in this one at all. I mean, I have friends who have beautiful reef tanks. I know they have no pests. I have no pests in my reef tank. We trade corals all the time. It doesn't matter. Anything that comes into any one of our tanks gets dipped. You have to do this every single time. It's not worth dealing with the headaches of having pests in your tank. 15 minutes of dipping can save you hours and months of headache and heartbreak if you were to get a pest. So that's how you frag corals. Thanks for your requests. Keep them coming. I'm Mark Callahan, Mr. Saltwater Tank. Until next time, know your tank personality, enjoy your tanks, and have a good one.